Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to Masterclass in session main tank, Rolls 101. So just gonna start off with a bit of an introduction about myself. I'm Cuffa. I've played competitive Overwatch for around 2 years, and I'm from Australia. My expertise in playing main tank. Probably my best hero will be Winston, followed up closely by Everest and Ball. A little bit of background behind. I've hit 4600 SR on North American ladder, played multiple times. I've played in 3 seasons of AU Contenders, and I've won one of them. I'm second in another and third in the most recent one, unfortunately. I'm looking to redeem that this season. I played in the 2020 Asia Gauntlet, and we beat Billy Gaming 3-1, which led us to actually not becoming last in our group, which is a pretty good push for Australia, I guess. So what we're going to be going through today is understanding main tanks, leadership behind the role of being a main tank, a lot about the misconceptions on how main tanks are supposed to play, especially around like Reinhardt and like, you know, being thought of to be like the carry of the, especially in like GOATs, pros and cons of being a main tank player, and compositions. So, you know, a lot of compositions are dependent on, well, a lot of main tanks are dependent on the composition that's built around them. So we'll get into that later. So start off, we're gonna have to understand main tank on a basic level. So main tank is the backbone of the team, and you know, you're the leader. You gotta creating space and enabling your team. So leadership, creating space, and enabling your team are your 3 main responsibilities, and those can be viewed in a lot of different ways. But I like to put leadership at the top, and communication is probably the most vital thing of a main tank. And I think that's pretty underlooked. I think a lot of people just look at raw mechanics of a main tank and think that, you know, you see all these like huge primal plays and like great shatters from, you know, like Kaiser in Apex and stuff like that. Like, oh my god, this guy is insane. But I think the main carry of a main tank is actually the leadership and the communication that follows behind it all. So taking space, I mean, it's often, you gotta enable your team, so it's often hard to be able to, you know, walk in without having your team support you. So I think a lot of people just end up just walking forward, you know, like it's really dependent on what heroes you're playing. Like Reinhardt, it's much more one-dimensional, you know, you just walk forward with your shield up and take space for your team. But it's actually a lot trickier than that in most times, and especially in pro play when you're gonna get punished for the tiniest mistakes you make. So the art of occupying certain parts of the map in order to enable your team to proceed with less pressure. So by taking space, you're essentially enabling your team to push into all the map control that you want. So looking at King's Row, for example, on first point, you know, if you're playing like a Winston and you want to be taking the high ground, you want to be pressuring the high ground because that's where like their supports or damage are most likely going to be pressuring from. And if you take that map control, you just set your team up to engage from all different directions, whether it be through hotel. I'll go through a little bit more of this later when I'm showing VODs. But I think taking space in your team is often really difficult, but as long as you have like the communication and follow-up from your team, it can be accomplished rather easily. It's just depending on the situation and the map type for sure. It is also really important to know what cooldowns to use for tanks to swiftly and efficiently take space for your team. So if you're playing like a Winston Xayah composition on King's Row, you know, you want to be communicating with your Xayah if possible. I know sometimes you're in ranked and you know, some of your teammates aren't in voice chat, but you know, as much as you can, try to communicate with other players on your team and ask if they can do certain things for you. You know, like, hey, I want to take top right high ground. Hey Xayah, can you bubble me when I go? And then you go, you know, you can do a little of a cooldown, a countdown, you know, hey, 3, 2, 1, okay, bubble me, and then you jump that high ground, and you can take it possibly if you've got the right resources, if you've got your supports helping you, and you're a little bit of pressure from your damage, and it's honestly like, if you take that high ground, you're doing your job and you're doing it great. Like, you don't have to go for these fancy plays when you're playing main tank. You just have to do what your team needs you to do, whether that be taking space or moving into a certain position. It's much more basic than people think it is. And we'll go into leadership now. So main tank is the most influential role in the game. That's how I like to see it. I've been playing main tank for the last 3.5 years, I reckon. And I think it's quite a big, deciding factor in whether you're winning your ranked games or not, is whether your main tank is just absolutely feeding or, just doing his bare job or carrying, So leadership makes a huge difference. I think not many people realize like how important you are to just let your team do stuff, You're often there to just let them take, like, you take the space, but you can't always just like do all these fancy plays. You don't have to hit these 6-man shatters to win every ranked game, right? Like, you could be losing like almost you could not hit a single shatter in a ranked game, but you can still win. And that's not necessarily due to you playing like too poorly. It's just, obviously it's a bit unfortunate with the shatters, but if you're taking the mandatory and necessary steps for your team to succeed and like enabling your team, so taking the space like I was talking about earlier, you're doing a good job. Like, it's pretty, like, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about like the mechanic side of things as main tank, honestly. I think it's far too overlooked, and you'll actually often find some people, even in like high positions within pro play, they're not that mechanically supreme, but they just have really good game sense, strong leadership, and vital communication, which goes a long way, especially in pro play. So I'm going to be talking about a couple of misconceptions of main tank, and if you guys have any like questions like mid talk, like, and you don't want to like wait until the end of the Q&A because you might forget, maybe just write it down, or you can, I'm not sure if we're able to get permission, but if you can, just ask whenever, just so you don't forget. That's fine as well. I don't really mind being interrupted if it's if you want to learn something and need to have more closure on a question, that's fine. So misconceptions of main tank. I think, yeah, main tank is the team carry. It's not true at all, really. Maybe sometimes in GOATs, Reinhardt was perceived as the carry, but there's a lot of external factors which lead up to them actually doing those huge plays, hitting those big shatters, and like a lot of things. You're not just gonna have this great success from a great main tank. You have all these like your off tank supporting you, your damage, like well, in GOATs, like you get those Briggs shatter stun combos, stuff like that. Like that synergy with your team is definitely what's going to be the difference maker between a good like main tank, especially in GOATs, and a bad main tank. Good main tank players do not have to solely rely on raw mechanics. Without strong leadership, communication, and game planning, a main tank lacks. So I think, yeah, like I was saying earlier, this is heavily underlooked. Main tanks, you don't always have to have the strongest of mechanics, and I think that can be a good sign. If you're thinking right now, oh, my mechanics are kind of weak and like I really want to get better, I think the best thing you can do to improve your main tank is just to practice and improve your communication skills and fight planning. Because I've still had this issue throughout my entire pro play career where I am not that strong of a leader, which has been an issue, but I've been trying like to better it. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. As you play, you're gonna like become more aware about stuff, and your game sense is gonna improve exponentially, right? But there's a lot of things that you can't always just work on in VOD reviews, and and looking back and like, what did I do wrong here? Because unless you have like the communication behind it, like you have your VODs recorded with sound, you're often just going to be looking at the raw mechanic side of it. But there's a lot of theory behind it, which is much more important. I like to see it as, because I think any day, if you're committed, any day you can go in and just practice a hero and try and get better. But the theory side of things is often going to be the thing that will take you to the further level. So I think like with playing Winston, you know, you could be practicing like 1 hour a day doing like practicing primal rages and trying to get juggling mechanics up to like top level. But you could have like the best juggling skills in the world. You could be fearless with his juggles. But if you don't have that necessary game sense and awareness when you're playing Winston and understanding how vulnerable of a hero that is, you're often going to struggle when it actually comes to playing into the game, playing in like a match or anything. So a lot of, I think like I want everyone here today to just like focus more about like the theory side. And if you're struggling a lot about like playing a new hero like Winston or Ball, you know, you're trying to learn a new hero, I think one of the best things you can do is just to be going back into your replays and thinking about what you did wrong here, and like just realizing like what has got me to like, why have I done this wrong, and what has pressured me into doing something. So like if you're watching back a replay and you're playing Winston into like a Reaper comp and you're struggling a bit, right? Because, you know, Reaper is generally a pretty hard counter into Winston. So I think, you know, you just got to take those steps and realize, hey, I'm playing a hero that's like really like, regardless of how well I can do, it's often going to be like stumped just because they have this hero, and maybe it's a better option to play another hero, another main tank to, you know, that's less that doesn't get destroyed by Reaper as easily, because I know Winston that's like his fatal flaw, right? So yeah. Pros and cons of main tank. So you are the core of the team, as I said, you're the backbone. So, you know, your team's always going to be relying on you to take that space and move in, because, you know, you don't really see, I mean, maybe in some bad ranked games you might see a Reinhardt being the back of the team, but, you know, usually your Reinhardt's up front, taking that space of the shield, walking in. And strong leadership, I mean, that could be a con as well, because you need to have strong leadership to make up for your hero at oftentimes, you know. And if you have weak leadership, it's going to be a con, because there's many main tanks out there that will just have better leadership even if they have way worse mechanics. I've seen it firsthand. When I was first starting like into my professional career, I guess I would say, my leadership was very weak. Even if my mechanics were stronger than other main tanks, it actually was like, yeah, it was my demise at the time. You know, I missed out on getting into a Contenders team in 2019 season 2 because like I was not vocal at all. Like I may have had the mechanics to do better than the rest of the main tank trials, but, you know, I just did not have that leadership, and that leadership goes a long way, especially in the confidence of your other teammates. You know, if you just come into every game with extreme confidence that you're gonna and you're gonna communicate as much as possible, your team is just gonna feel that, and they're gonna like ride off your energy, and it's just gonna be good. Like there's nothing wrong with communicating a lot. You know, there's gonna be times where you may be communicating too much when it becomes like filler talk, but honestly, I think even like at any rank, talking as much as possible is good, as long as you're not, you know, not talking about somebody's day mid-ranked fight. I think talking, just communicating, just saying anything, you know, saying, oh, the Zarya has no bubbles, we can push in, like stuff like that, and just going off that is great, like, because your team is going to be like, hey, okay, we can do this, you know. But if you've got a main tank that just doesn't say anything, and I'm sure you guys have definitely had ranked games where like one of your like, I mean, maybe you're not playing main tank at the time, but, you know, you've got a tank player that's just not saying anything, and you miss out on a lot of capitalized opportunities. You know, there's a lot of things that you can't always see and your teammates might see, and they can communicate that to you, but if they're not communicating that to you, you're at a disadvantage. You know, the other team might be communicating 10 times better than you, and that's the reason why you lose that game, because, you know, they're just calling out, hey, Tracer's one on point, and nobody on your team's saying anything, and like, so your Tracer dies, right? You know, you've got no target focus or anything like that. So communication is like a huge thing of main tank, and I think like, yeah, it just needs to be like more assessed. So, and you're also heavily influential playing main tank. You're definitely going to be like a deciding factor in whether you win a lot of fights. whether that be like, you're going in for like a nano blade engage. And I think a lot of the times if you're playing like, or depending on the composition, but if you have a Genji Ana and you're going for a nano blade, you generally want to go in first and take the bulk of like just to give your Genji room to go in, right? To give space, enable your team. But you also want to be like, if you're jumping in first, you're going to be taking the bulk of the enemy team's focus onto you for a short period of time, and they may use necessary cooldowns that they wanted to save to defend the nano blade. So I think, yeah, just like there's a lot of distraction side of it, and you can actually get away with much more just by enabling your Genji to do that. Because if you jump in just before we go for nano blade, and their brig uses stun on you, that's huge. That is like absolutely huge. Like if you do that, even if you die straight away and your Genji kills 4 because their brig has no stun, you've just like essentially like you've done your job. It doesn't matter if you die. It's great. And we'll move on to the cons now. So the team has to play around your hero, which is a bit of a struggle, with some heroes, especially like main tank. It's very composition dependent. So I'll go into it in a second. But if you're playing like a Reinhardt, you got no speed, you got no Lucio, you're often going to struggle, and that's why if you're watching Overwatch League right now, there's not many Reinhardt comps being played because Lucio is banned. There was only Atlanta Reign, I believe, was playing it. And that's primarily to do with them just playing to their strengths. Gator's a very strong main Reinhardt player, so he's a bit weaker on the Winston and the ball, but his Reinhardt and Nerissa are very strong, so they like to play to those comfort picks, and it's working out for them. But yeah, most times in pro play, like if you're playing like a Winston, you're gonna need often like a Xayah or a Diva to help you enable, and maybe an Ana, because if you're playing Winston with like Zen Brig, it's gonna be a struggle. You lose half your health in a fight, and you're just like scurrying around trying to get health packs and stuff like that, and it's just not effective. You may as well swap to like Wrecking Ball at that point. Fails in poor team play. So I think even when you're playing like a good comp, like you're playing like a brawl comp with the Ryan Lucio, and you want to be like speeding around, going places, if you're not being like if you're not communicating with your team and your Lucio about where you want to go and when do you want to be like boosted in by your Lucio, you're gonna struggle, and you're gonna fail. Like you need to all be on the same page, and it's often hard to do that when you're playing, like to put your team on the same page as you if you're not effectively communicating. So I think that's probably one of the biggest cons of main tank. You have to be constantly vocal. Requires lots of secondary support. So like I was saying, if you're playing the Winston, you generally will need an Ana. There's not many times as you see in pro play that a Winston is played without an Ana, and that's because those heroes just work well together, and Winston is just way too vulnerable to not have an Ana consistently pocketing him. So that's just another con of just the heroes of main tank in general. Reinhardt without a Lucio generally is bad. Winston without an Ana generally is bad. Overkill without like a Baptiste is generally weak. It's not ideal. And yeah, I like to think of it as like make it or break it. That there's so many things that could go right when you're playing main tank. Like you could be just absolutely doing entirely your job, and then there's other times, like other games, where you're just getting absolutely counted. You're playing Wrecking Ball and they've got a Sombra and a Mei or a McCree. You're just constantly getting stunned and hacked and froze, and that's the games where you just notice and you're like, oh, I'm really not doing well here. Maybe I should. And that's when you got to come to the realization, like maybe I should swap here because it's obviously not working. So I think just having that game sense to realize in what situations will you be directly counted and it just won't work out. And if you guys have any questions about like hero counters and stuff like that, later on we can talk about that. I'll go into a little bit of depth in it. And like I was saying, composition dependent. So when you're playing like the Winston Ana comp, sometimes you have a Xayah because you can get that bubble to take that extra space, but it's often fine with a Diva. It really depends on the map. So a lot of your games are going to be map dependent. If you're having a Xayah, you're going to be playing on like maybe a low ground-ish map. But if you're playing something like Watchpoint Gibraltar, where there's constant always high grounds, a D.Va would be a suitable replacement for that, just because she's able to get up there with ease. And they'll talk about Orisa a bit. Orisa heavily relies on the team's composition to successfully follow up on her pulls. She doesn't really have that much of an outcome on the game if she's not getting efficient pulls and, you know, taking that space. And I think Orisa is actually very strong for holding space, and you don't actually need that much support, and that's why she's a pretty strong hero. You know, you can solo hold point a lot of the time if you're playing like a spammy comp and you're like, you need your Orisa to go touch point because they're contesting. You can often do that because you have great survivability, you know. And if you have a Baptiste pair with you, you got the lamp and you got your fortify, so you can last a long time. But Orisa generally does not work outside of those slow spam comps, unless you're playing like the World Cup meta of 2019, which is, I reckon it was a bit of a one-off with the Lucio speed, the Brawl Orisa comp. You know, that's generally not played that often because she's much more efficient in just holding space in slow spam comps. And Ball can get away with most as main tanks, you know. So you're often tied down with compositions. You know, if you're playing Reinhardt, you go for a Brawl composition. Playing Orisa, you're going for the slow spam. And the Winston, you know, playing for those nano engages, you know, just it's somewhat slow, but it ramps up in the fights. But you need that support from your team. You need that Ana to be with. Like, if you don't have an Ana, you're going to struggle. So those three heroes, they all need like support from certain heroes, right? But Ball you can get away with in a lot of scenarios. You know, you don't necessarily need a Baptiste or an Ana or anything. You can play with pretty much any support as a Ball, because a lot of the time you're just going to be playing around health packs. And that's just like one of the greatest things about Ball, is he is just so strong in being able to survive. Like, his survivability is next to, like, he's just really, really good at just getting in and out, and, you know, he's just being annoying. And that's just a great thing about Ball, because he doesn't need much help. He can just go and he's very independent. And so now I'm going to be going on to a couple VODs. So first of all, I'm going to be going through a ranked game of my own, and it's going to be like of my Orisa POV. And this is just going to be giving like a general idea about like how communication should look like in a ranked game, if you have, you know, your team in voice chat first of all. So I'm just going to play the communication, and I'll stop and pause and jump through at times. Cool choke. 3, 2, 1. So just starting off here. You know, I like to do 3, 2, 1 pull cooldowns, sorry, when I'm playing Orisa, because, you know, it just gives your team a little bit of time to focus on, you know, where you're pulling. You know, if you're saying pulling main 3, 2, 1, your team's gonna have a little bit of time to react to it and get ready to focus on the pull, instead of just saying pulling, like, you know, without cooldown. But, you know, at times you're not going to be able to give a cooldown, because, you know, you might miss the opportunity. So don't always try and get a 3, 2, 1 cooldown, because sometimes you might just miss an opportunity. So if you see the opportunity in front of you and you can get a nice pull, just go for it and just, you know, be vocal about it. But in like these slow times, like at the start of a round and stuff like that, I like to give 3, 2, 1 pull cooldown. Sorry. I think she's broken. Oh, down here. Play main now. No, it's one now. I'll my shield's broken soon. And my flank's right. My flank's right.
Just one.
Think above us. Shut up, man. Play main. Let's quick.
Just one. Really one there.
Just chill. So just, you know, I'm giving information about where the Sigma is. He's on the high ground. I'm just communicating to my team, and then I engage back in with the pool main, and our team's all ready to focus on it, because I'm communicating. You know, if you're playing Orisa and you're not communicating to your team about your pools and stuff like that, you're often going to struggle to find value, and your team's going to struggle to find value in having you as that hero. Hold close though. We're going to push off. Close. Nice.
You can kill hold me.
I've shot on. Hug pull.
Nice, back now, back now, back now.
Come back, man. Come back, man.
Shield's better, right? Keep out of that. Why not? Sunday on it. Play me in 3, 2, 1, play now. Take his no shield. Then left. Hug man. Play in 2, 1. Play now, play now. I don't think. Answer my bots. And just another thing, you don't always have to be pulling off cooldown, like as soon as you get it, go for a pull. There's a lot of times that's a bit of an issue, or sometimes a bit of an issue because you're just going straight for it all the time. You might miss an opportunity that'll come 2 seconds after you use that pull, and it's actually one of the things I was heavily critiqued on during my first proper season. You know, my coach would always say, stop just sending out your pulls all the time because you might just miss an opportunity. But I think in this situation where all our team is just constantly spamming main, you know, we need this constant pressure on their team because especially where we just lost our May. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue here, but you just need to be a bit mindful about how often you're using pulls. And if you're realizing that you're missing opportunities right after, maybe be like, hey, I should save it a little bit more so my team can be ready to follow up or stuff like that, you know. Streams a bit laggy. Nice. Help us in, help us in, help us in.
Help us in.
I'm not greatness. That's one.
I'm gonna skip a bit forward here.
Yeah, Hogs in cafe.
So I'm just constantly giving information to my team, especially about the Hog, because he's a threat. He's one of the biggest threats, you know. If he gets one hook off on one of my supports or something, they're gone, you know. So I just want to be constantly telling my team about where their Hog is, because he's one of the biggest threats and I'm worried about that. So I want to do my best to avoid him getting a pick easily. So constantly giving this information to your team.
Big blows. I'll play Messi. Messi pull. Hog flank right side, hog flank behind.
So yeah, like I was a little bit late on the communication with the Hog and he managed to kill LZM, which made us lose the fight.
Where? They all straight side. Thanks, they sig.
And I did a little bit of ult tracking here. I mean, it's not necessarily your job when you're playing main tank, but if you're in ranked and you don't have like your designated ult tracker, it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to, you know, give your team a little bit of insight of what to expect next fight. And if you're thinking about like, if you don't have an ult tracker, like you're in ranked, try to do it yourself and think about what they're going to use and how you can counter it. And if you think about that like every fight and it becomes natural, you're just going to like improve a lot, because you're going to realize, hey, they're going to use they're going to use window, so we can use symbol to counter that, and you know, just we don't have to worry about it, right? Because we got the symbol, you know, stuff like that. You know, just think about what ults you can use or what things you can do to counter their ults in the upcoming fight, and you'll generally just improve your game sense and knowledge about what can work and what can't work. And there's a lot of limit testing around this, and I think you'll just learn with how much you play, and the more you play, you'll just realize like what you can get away with. You know, limit testing is fine.
Big low. Come in.
I'm giving your team a bit of direction on where to go.
Then one, hug one. Big one. GG.
That's a lot of damage.
So yeah, just telling your team where to go if you can, you know. So we walked out that right side, but I wanted our team to rotate main, and we could just walk up with my bongo, and we won instantly off communicating with my team that I'm gonna walk forward main. I didn't say I was gonna bongo, but I mean I called my pull, and we killed them all. We won. So next I'm gonna go into a couple of examples from a couple old VODs. So this is just like general communication, and how I go about when I'm trying to play a match or a scrim, and how when I want to approach a fight and take space. So this is gonna be about taking space.
Still first.
So you just gotta be communicating with your team.
Just can monkey dive. Any heals? We can win still.
Hey, look at Monkey. I can build.
Building nano. Echo one.
I don't know nade.
We have nano really soon.
Nano fast.
Shoot D.Va, shoot
나
D.Va.
2층 뛸 수 있어.
네, 나노 있어, 나노 있어.
2층 I can second floor 다이브.
Wait,
I
wait,
can
wait.
nano soon. Wait.
나 진짜.
So notice how I'm just waiting for our Nano, you know, slowly main, and then I'm gonna go for a deep engage.
스페이스도 모르고 있어.
Hey, they're gonna go. They're gonna go.
I can.
Wait.
This isn't necessarily clean, but it's just an example of
안
successfully taking space. So we trade both their backline off that dive.
오케이.
Monkey one.
살아봐. 살기만 해. 맞딜 안 넣어도 돼.
Help us support.
I'm on point right now.
꼴려 갑자기.
베리 나이스 팀.
Nice team.
이거 비하인드 에코 비하인드.
So that's just how we successfully take point. You know, just by communicating with my team and how I want to take space, and you know, playing a little bit slow, waiting for Nano, and yeah, just engaging together. You know, I was talking with my tracer how I like when I want to go in. He sets up behind so we can engage together and we create a choke point, and you know, just sandwich them from either sides, and we get both the kills and it works off and we win the fight and we cap point. So that's just like a little bit of example, a little bit of insight into a team play aspect of it, and you know, taking that space and enabling my tracer to help and, you know, get the team kills. And this is going to be another example of taking that space. These aren't really clean examples. I don't really want to be like, you know, leaking too much stuff. So these are like, you know, rough examples of just me taking space and how I talk to my team about how I went about it. Oh, she backing. Can we bob point pushing?
아니
애쉬온.
웨이.
Oh shit.
지금 밀어놨어? 이거 메인 푸셔다.
하나로.
Let's go.
애쉬온.
워킹
Come on, Ash.
포인트
She's gonna heal.
비켜볼 그래.
I'm building in.
하나.
서. Zolo.
비켜볼 그래.
노베려. 차례 노베려.
Look at big.
Okay, main. I don't low main.
There's a one.
Monkey point. Genji Tracer Nariko right side. Trade one. And on right side. That's just like a bit of insight into you know, how to take space for your team and enable your team to walk up, you know, especially on those points of Volskaya second and Nimbani 8. I think are a bit like they're kind of hard to approach, especially Volskaya B, you know, and just enabling your team, like having that space created and then, you know, distracting their backline, it just opens your team up for a lot of opportunities. You know, you're if you're like contesting their supports, you can just let your team know, hey, they have no heals on tanks right now, I'm on the supports, and then your team can all just target the Winston or the D.Va that's in your spawn or whatever, you know, stuff like that, and you know, just win the team fight off that.
Hello, welcome to the masterclass session for the off tank. I am Akame, and a little bit about myself. I picked tank role in 4.6 in rank, and I'm just a flex player all around. I play pretty much every single character there is in the game, so I don't really have a main role, but I do play Zarya and D.Va a lot, so that's why I'll be doing this off-tank presentation. So a little bit achievement about me. I represented Team Singapore 2 years ago, and I placed third with Forest Society in Overwatch Ace tournament, and second place in the Overwatch Sigma C tournament. Alright, let's move on to the lesson for today. So today what are we gonna be talking about for off tank is like what is an off tank, like what you're supposed to do, what is your role in the team, and then we are gonna be talking about how do I off tank and some misconceptions of off tank, on like why people think, what generally the people think and why that is wrong, and we'll be talking about pros and cons for off tank and which off tank to pick in the right situation. Alright, let's get it started. So, understanding off tank. Alright, off tank is in my eyes, off tank is not really a tank role. It's more of a third support role to help your main tank to create space for your team so that you can have room to do something in the fight and help our DPS to really just get space to really deal damage to the enemy team. So it's kind of like a third support in a sense that instead of healing your main tank, you're giving him bubbles, you're giving him matrix or additional shield for him to really take the space for your team. So also like off tanks have a lot of utility sets that provides abilities or to help your team to take advantage of, and it also enables your DPS more to do damage and get picks during a fight. Alright. Off tanks are there to help set up things so that in a team fight you won't lose that badly. For example, you can set up for a teammate with Sigma. With Diva, you can stand on high ground with maybe like a Ashe or McCree, a hit scan or Hanzo to set up an off angle so that they can get picks. Meanwhile, your main tank is below, below, just holding space, preventing the enemy team from coming in and rushing your team down, and also holding a contest space for your teammate. And one good example is that on King's Row, first point, if you're running like a double shield, Orisa Sig, Orisa can just anchor below on point, while you as off tank as Sigma can anchor at the second floor, and this contests the space so that the enemy team either have to commit their cooldowns or commit their ultimates in terms to forcing you off that high ground and like denying you much value in terms of like damage or even just space creating. Off tanks can also engage enemies as well, even though I say that off tanks are technically like a third support. Off tanks like Diva or Sig has great utility to engage enemy in a team fight. Escaping from an enemy, well, I think for that, I think Diva is like the best choice of off tank in terms to have a team escape enemy. Sometimes Zarya too with the team bubble, and the Sig with the matrix and his own personal shield. Just generally, pretty much every off tank have a tool to help your teammate escape from an enemy or help them to get space and just avoid the enemy. Sometimes off tanks have really good ultimates to save crucial fights with right gameplay. With Diva Bomb, maybe you can get like a clutch bomb with like a 2k or 3k during overtime. With Zarya, you have a grab where you can just grab them and then your team can follow up, and pretty much you win your team fight. And with Graphitic Flux, you can choose to either use it as a counter ultimate, or you can use it as engaging ultimate. So it can also, off tanks can also hinder like enemy team from really doing their jobs correctly. They can disrupt it, they can really use their CC controls to really just stop them from what they want to do. Alright, so this slide we'll be talking about the utility for Sigma. Alright, so for Diva Matrix, it has a very versatile use. You can either use it to help your team, or you can use it to help your backline, or you can use it to even create space. So for example, about creating space is that what I like to do is I'll fly in and basically feed into the enemy lines, but not really like into the 6 of them, but I'll just stand right in front of them and just being a nuisance and use the 2 seconds of matrix to force whatever cooldown they'll throw at me and just fall back to the team. So that's just one playstyle that I really like to use. And the matrix can also help when you're playing dive, when you have a Winston diva. When Winston is jumping in, you can hold your matrix on him, and the 2 seconds of whatever the enemy team throws at your own Winston is just negated by your matrix. And third, of course, you can also use matrix to protect your backline from pulse bombs, from like just McCree flanking or a Widow shot. You can just use matrix to just eat out of that. Alright, so with Diva Bomb, there is I would say 2 to 3 different style of Diva Bomb. One is the engaging Diva Bomb, where before the start of team fight, like as you're going to team fight, you throw your bomb in terms to create space for a team, because obviously nobody want to just stand in the line of sight of a Diva Bomb, so they would want to hide behind a wall. And Diva Bomb is a great space controlling tool, and you just throw it into a team fight, and your team can usually pick off 1 or 2 isolated targets. So that's one of the playstyle. Another Diva Bomb would be like a remacking kind of Diva Bomb, where you commit to a team fight, but then unfortunately you get demech, but you have Diva Bomb, so you just use the bomb just to get back your max so you can fight even longer. And the third one is like just a stalling bomb. In overtime situation, you oftentimes just stall it long enough till the overtime timers like ticks down really fast, and at this time you throw your bomb into like a point or an objective, and just try and force the enemy just to get off the objective and win the round. Alright, for Zarya, Zarya's bubbles have different usage as well. First of all, the self bubble, of course, is to get energy so that you can deal damage. But then for Zarya bubbles, you can also block some abilities for your team. For example, like Reinhardt Shatter or Roadhog Poke. These are the abilities that can be blocked by Zarya bubble, and if your team is standing behind you, it'll be negated completely. So for Zarya's team bubble, it can save your teammate from a bunch of cooldowns, pulse bomb, anti-nades. It will help cleanse the anti, and also like Roadhog hooks, and as well as Zarya can help your main tank to really engage and just create space for your team. So here we have I have like a video of space, which is one of the Overwatch League off tanks, and we'll see how he uses Zarya. So in this fight, you see enemy team is coming in, and he calls to push Ryan, and he just bubbles his Ryan in, and look at the enemy team. They immediately just retreat because they couldn't stop the Ryan push. So you see in this case, your whole entire team has so much space to do this. They could go from the left, they can go from the right, and what enemy can just do is just really just fall back and wait for their cooldowns, and then they can push again. This is one of the examples for Zarya engaging bubbles. For Zarya Graph, there is I guess it's really up to you, but what I like to do is for Zarya, I like to really just graph. I'm not looking for a big like 4-5 man graph. I like to do during fights 1 to 2 man graph that I can graph that are important, you know, because usually in high level plays it's pretty much impossible to get a 4 to 5 man graph because the enemy team really knows how to position well if they know you have graph, and they will out track saying, oh hey, that I have graph and just watch out and just position correctly. And so I like to do is just graph like some important targets like a 1 to 2 man graph, and this helps a lot for our team to take advantage of and win the fight. For Zarya graph, don't be afraid to solo graph, because if you're looking for the 4 to 5 man graph, by the time you actually get it, you probably would have built another graph by the time that you get that big 4 to 5 man graph. So yeah, so some usage for the graph is, you know, of course the engaging graph where you just graph the enemy team and your team follow up. It can also be used to kind of like peel, I would say. Like for example, if you're playing against dive and they're diving your backline, you can use it to graph maybe their tanks so that it will stay out of reach to your backline, and you know, just punishes the tanks for like diving your backline, you know. So for Sigma, his hands, it can be help for you to off angle. Sigma kit, I think Sigma's kit is the best in all of off tank to off angle because he has his own shield, he has his own matrix which he can turn into his own HP and just do a lot of damage off angle. So for Sigma's E, you can either use to help your team, like just absorb damage for your front line, or you can just use it for yourself. So I have here another example from Space and on how he off angle. Alright, so in this one, he used his Sigma's Flux to engage, and then look where he positioned. He don't position behind the Orisa shield. He positioned to the right side, and then he moves up behind enemy lines. And like just alright, just let the clip play itself. But yeah, they won the team fight. And just look, after he just used his Flux, he already got 75% from that, because enemy team is running a Ryan Lucio rush, and obviously they don't wanna like waste their time, you know, just rushing and off angling sake because it's overtime right now. Look at how much space actually has space, you know. So he just, you know, just at the off angle, just shooting, doing so much damage. Look at his out charge. It just charges so fast. Already 50%. Uses the E to, you know, have him sustain so that he can contest payload. And he's already at 72%, 75% at the end of the fight. And he'll probably have another Flux into the next fight. So this is how you can use your Sigma kit to really just off angle and help you win team fights. So execution or gameplay, being at the right place at the right time, you know, it honestly all comes down to communication with your team. Say, hey, I have bubble. Winston, do you want a bubble to jump in? And then when he jumps in, you instantly give the bubble so that he can make space, you know. And also being in the position to like you know, help out your tanks or help out your main tank or help out your team or your backline during the team fight. So for Winston, like when he jumps in, usually you give him the bubble, and then when your bubble expire, and then Winston will drop his own bubble, and then by the time that they destroy the bubble, Winston can just jump back to your team, and then it's just a rinse and repeat kind of thing until you get ultimates to really win the fight. And you know, if they're diving your backline, you can also like help your own backline or help your DPS to punish the tanks or the DPS that are diving your backline. And also you can of course use your bubble on the backline, your own backline, because if your main tank know how to really play and survive, usually he'll be okay without like dying, since like enemy team is just focusing on your backline and not really focusing on him. And usually a bubble isn't really always required for the Winston. It all comes down to situation actually. So yeah, and also looking at the right targets during a fight. So understanding your priorities in a team fight and what you're playing. Let's say you're playing a diva. Of course, let's say, you know, Winston dive against a Winston dive mirror matchup, and you're playing diva. You should look at the right targets. You know, not a tracer. You should, as a diva, you should look at a tracer instead of a Winston, right? Because you have this defense matrix to help eat like the tracer bullets, but matrix can't eat the Winston Tesla cannon. So yeah, you just have to take notes of these like micro things during a team fight, and I think you like see like much more impact you have in the team fight if you're looking at the right targets. So here we have some misconceptions of off-tanks. So hey, alright, the first one will be, hey, I'm a tank, and I should be taking damage just like my main tank. So why this is a misconception is that what I said earlier, it basically refers to what I said earlier with how off tanks acts like a third support for your main tank, but not really like providing healing. Not providing healing, but instead like a bubble, like a matrix or utilities to help your main tank create space, so that, you know, your whole team can just follow up on that space. So sometimes, however, you can actually like help take some damage for your main tank to, you know, charge his cooldowns off. For example, in a Ryan Zarya matchup, you can use your self bubble. If your Ryan shield is low, you can use your self bubble to tank some of the damage, so that your Ryan can just charge his shield, and then he can walk up again with your team bubble. So this is just the first misconception. So second misconception is that I have high damage, which means I am just like my DPS, therefore, you know, I have to always kill the enemy, which is not the case, because, you know, off tanks, what excels in off tank is like the ability and the utility usage to really protect your team. So alright, for example, Zarya, when it's high energy, you have really high damage, right? Of course you wanna, you know, just really beam down the enemy, you know, getting kills. But sometimes you try and beam down enemy to the point that you forgot that you have this team bubble, and maybe a Winston tracer dive to your backline and your Ana's dead, and you're just beaming down the enemy without regarding for your own Ana, and without the healing, of course you're just gonna die soon after. So sometimes it's not really about doing damage, but it's about looking at the situation and their positioning so that you can position yourself to help your team, to help you to do damage. So it's just a very situation based kind of thing. Alright, so for the third point is that for off tank, I need to be aggressive or passive all the time. That's not really the case. Of course, in a dive, you know, you can be aggressive and take space, but in a context when they have an ultimate advantage over you, usually you in high level plays we'll call it a dry team fight, where we just let them use ults while we just build up our own and just not use any ults. So it really depends kind of time, because in a fast paced game like Overwatch, being aggressive and passive is interchangeable, and it just comes down to a situation whether you need to be aggressive or passive. And so in the times where you need to be aggressive is when, you know, you have ultimates to win the fight, and like it's really less game winning ultimates, and you wanna commit all the way in so that you can get this picks off with its ultimates. Being passive is just, you know, just doing soft dive just doing soft dives on the enemy team, or maybe just poke here and maybe they'll just commit ultimates to, you know, kill you, or just commit lots of ultimates to just win a team fight. So these are just some misconception of off tanks. And alright, so some pros and cons for the off tank rule. So the pros is, of course, you know, among all the other main tanks, you have the highest utility among all the other main tanks, and that's hence why I'd say that off tank are the third support in the team, because you just have so much utility to help your backline, help your main tank, help your DPS, and really help them to take advantage of your utility to, like, even do damage to the enemy or just heal up your team. So yeah, you know, like Diva Matrix and Zarya Bubbles, Sigma's Eat, Sigma Shield, Diva Bomb, Graph, you know, there's just a lot of crowd control abilities to really help your team to excel in a team fight. Off tanks have like I would say higher damage. Other than off tanks have higher damage than, like, I would say all the main tanks, and also have a lot of crowd control abilities and mobility. So that's why they can, like, you know, juggle between the backline and your main tank, like just juggle between, like, giving resources to your main tank to really make space, and juggle to the backline and protect them from, like, backline threats like Tracer or Winston. So that's hence why that off tanks are the backbone of the team. Off tank is the spine of the team. Without the spine, of course, the body doesn't work. So yeah. So some cons for off tank is that usually they are the worst at taking, like, tanking damage for the team. You know, of course they have abilities to help tank damage for the team, but usually if that ability go on cooldown, you know, it's really like kind of, they're just like a meat shield, you know, and just sit there, let the enemy team just shoot them, and then you can't really take damage for the team. Usually off tanks have only like one good trait, and a very bad secondary trait, which is like for Diva, she have a very high mobility and she can protect her teammates well, but then she doesn't have a shield, so she can just be poked out from like Widow, Ashe, McCree, Hanzo, and they can just poke her out or try to demec her. And for Zarya, you know, she has high damage and you know that she can protect her team with the team bubble, but then she lacks mobility. So if she overextends, she'll get picked off by the enemy team. For Sigma, I think Sigma has mobility issues as well. If you overextend, that's where you die. But Sigma all around has like a really good utility set, corrupt control, you know, defense matrix, and just a mobile shield that he have. So off tanks have also have a short effective range, and you know, or let's say we can say that in general that the whole of the tank role has a very short effective range, not including ultimates of course. Usually if you're playing off tanks against a poke comp, you pretty much wouldn't be doing any damage because they're just so far away poking you. So I think that's just cons on some, like that's just a bad part about being, you know, playing as a tank. Alright, so what off tanks to pick at the right time? Alright, for Zarya, in maps like you know, King's Row, or I would say Ilios or Lijiang Control Center, where there's not much high ground and it's just a flat line and it's just a really broady kind of map. You know, Zarya is a great pick because it can protect the team and it can do so much damage in like mere seconds. But of course, you know, it has a low, the only control that she have is just her ultimate, her grab, and it takes like probably, I would say, average like 1.5 minutes to build it. That's why she have like very low space control other than her own damage. So for Diva, if there's a lot of high ground, for example like Watch Point, Gibraltar, Hollywood, you can pick Diva because she can just fly up and down to the low ground to the high ground so easily, and just protect your team always. Even though that she doesn't have like crowd control abilities or she has like low damage, but she have a very high space control, and usually in these maps space control is very important in these maps so that you can force enemy into your own kill box. For Sig, honestly I feel like Sig can be played in every single map because of his utility set. Even though that he don't have mobility skills, he just deals so much damage. He have a matrix that can sustain for himself. He have a incretion. Is it called incretion? I forgot. But he have the rock to, you know, stun the enemy. He have a shield to hold space. So I just think that Sigma is like probably the hero that can play it on every single map, I would say. Or maybe not Watchpoint Gibraltar, but sometimes it might be viable depending on the situation. But for Roadhog, Roadhog is just assassin kind of off tank, I would say. You know, you don't really have a utility to help out your team other than your hook. If you get a hook and your team can deal damage usually they get yourself a pick, and then your team just win the team fight, right? So I'll say it would be more of like a assessing kind of off tank where you just try and flank and get a pick so that your team can move up, follow up.
Got a question here. Is it better to focus down a hack diva with the team as Winston, or dive in the backline? Example, Brig Anna bring more value in the mirror comp. It's a good question. I think there's a lot of ways you could approach this, right? And if the diva's like hacked on point and your entire team are like focusing it, honestly, what I would do in that situation you'd want to aim to split the enemy healers with the enemy diva, like split them apart. So maybe you can pressure their supports and place a bubble in between the diva and the supports, and that means she's not going to get any assistance, especially while she's hacked, because they either have to walk forward into the bubble and then to risk their lives to heal her, or she just dies on cart. Like, I think the best, like the most optional, the best option there is just to just walk forward a bit, pressure the supports, and try and split healers, because splitting healers with a Winston bubble is really, really effective, and it forces the enemy team into an unfavorable position, because they either have to push forward past the bubble just to heal their team, and risk their lives doing it, or they just have to like hope they survive long enough or get past the bubble themselves. But yeah, I would definitely go for like the bubble somewhere in the middle and pressuring the backline. You could even pressure the backline completely with bubble, just making sure that it cuts off LOS of the diva. But I think that's pretty situational, that experience. And it obviously depends on like if the diva is like really low health already. Because if she's full health and there's only like a diva shooting, like an enemy diva shooting at her, she's not gonna die. Like, even if you turn to her as a Winston, you're not gonna kill her in time for the hack by the time the hack ends. So yeah, it's really dependent on like how much of your team is focusing on. But I think probably a lot of people right now thinking about, what do I do if my team in ranked are like not communicating, whether they're not being voice chat or they're just not talking, stuff like that. I think even if there's only like one other person in voice chat, you should always just communicate as much as you can. Maybe try to like encourage them to join voice chat, but don't be like toxic about it. Be like, hey, can you please join voice chat, or stuff like that. Just be nice to people in ranked as much as you can, especially if like at the start of the game, because I don't know, there's a lot of people that just like don't tolerate stuff, and they might just go the wrong way about it. But if you're just being nice about it, like, hey, can you please join voice channel, stuff like that. And if they're playing like a hero that if they're playing like a hog and it's not an ideal hero to play with, your best bet, especially in ranked, is just to play around them. Maybe go like an Orisa, so you can go for the pull hook combos, and if they're in voice chat, you communicate those, stuff like that. I think ranked is often hard to win. There's a lot of unwinnable games, but I think your chances of winning those games increase by and like I'd say if you're communicating a lot and people are listening and stuff like that, your ranked game, like your chance of winning games just increase a lot, because you're obviously trying, and it rubs off on other people. If you're trying a lot in ranked, people are generally going to be, well, in my experience, people are generally going to be more inclined to try, like, because you're just trying a lot. So I think just always go into a game just trying your hardest to win, and also like when you're going into games, maybe do a bit of a review before. If you're going to a rank session, hey, like review what you want to work on, and then after you've done that rank session or whatever, just think back and like, hey, have I improved on what goals I wanted to work on? Have I gone back, or like has this worked, or have I just gone backwards? What has happened today since? And maybe a little bit of review. You only have to spend like 5 or 10 minutes before and after, and you'll actually improve a lot, like very quickly, because you're just going to be thinking about how you lost certain team fights and stuff like that a lot more than before, and it's just going to lead you to slowly but steadily improve, and you won't make like those minor mistakes as often.
Okay, is it better as a main tank to be in sync with your DPS, or like with your support? As in, if you're diving in, right, should you like make sure that your supports are ready to support you on your dive, or should you focus more on like allowing like on timing your dives with your DPS? I think.
Good question. I think, I mean, in the most ideal world, you know, if you're syncing your dives with your entire team, you know, it's not ideal to go for a dive unless your entire team is ready, because you're going to need a lot of support. You know, if you can wait, if your Anna needs a few more seconds to get set up, or if your DPS, you know, your Tracer's going behind them, she's like, wait a couple seconds, let me set up. Just wait that time, you know. You have time, unless you like, you know, it's a dire situation. Most of the time, you're gonna have a little bit of time to afford, and you're gonna have a few seconds to just wait, regroup a bit, and then, you know, go in. So I think it's better, like in the most ideal situation, just being in sync with your entire team and all on the same page is the best. But you know, if you can't, it probably want to be diving like more in sync with your supports, just so you can get that like healing follow up. But obviously it might be better if your Tracer's like setting up and you're in sync with your Tracer, and you know your Tracer might like kill 1 or 2, but like you generally just want to be on the same page as your entire team. And if that's costing you a few more seconds of time bank, it's worth it, and I think you should aim for that as the best option.
I do have one more thing I actually would like to ask. Like earlier, you showed us a replay you had on Numbani first point attack. I think you had Nano from you were Monkey. You had Nano, then you went and dived in. So like as for the enemy team, right? What should they have done? Should they have like counter dive you, or or was it the right pick for them to actually go after your supports instead?
Well, I think this is actually an issue I've struggled with a lot in the recent weeks, especially in this matchup on when Nano Winston engages. You know, should I be jumping back to Peel, or should I be trying to trade backlines? And we've come to the conclusion that trading backlines is the better option, because you're a Winston, or like if you know, maybe their Diva might, if I jump in now with this Nano Monkey, maybe their Diva could have come back and peeled. But if they're the Winston should not come back like that. That's not the correct option. The Winston should try trade backlines, and they do try that, but their team, their supports actually kite into a room that is perfectly lined up with my Tracer. But generally, like the easiest way to counter this Nano engage is by their Brig just flailing me off the high ground, which can be pretty difficult to avoid as a Winston when you have no Xayah to negate that boop with a bubble or stuff like that. So I think what that Winston did when he tried to trade backline was the right option. You know, we go at pretty much the same time. It's just their supports actually rotated into a unfavorable position for them, and my supports kited perfectly, and my Brig also hit the flail. So if you'll notice here, so I go for a Nano engage, and the Brig doesn't flail me, so I don't get booped or anything. And there you go, he gets flailed back, and then he can't go in properly. So it's a lot down to the Brigitte countering the Nano engage, especially on these high grounds. It can be very easily done as the Brig, especially when there's no bubbles, because if you get booped off, you're on the low ground and you just can't get back up, and your Nano's done and it's over. I'll just give a bit of insight into how it is competing in professional Overwatch, like in this example question. So like I said before, I've been competing for around 2 years, and it's pretty intense. I mean, if you're playing, I'm not saying I'm like at a very, I'm not you know, like Overwatch League, but if you're going to be playing in like Contenders, you're going to have to expect a decent amount of commitment. And so right now what I'm doing is we're doing around like, you know, 4 hours of scrims 5-6 days a week, and you know, 1 to 2 hours of theory and VOD reviews daily. So it's pretty intense. It takes up a lot of time, but I mean, right now I do it because I love it, right? You know, it's a very enjoyable thing, and if I didn't want to spend this many hours into it, I wouldn't do it, but I just enjoy it, and you know, I've got the time. You know, I'm a student right now. I don't really have that many major commitments, so it just works out for me, and it works out with my schedule. So yeah, it's been good, and you know, you're competing for money, so it's a nice bonus.
If let's say in my ranked games, I do have like, you know, people who don't join voice,
Yep.
and some, like, for example, let's say if I'm playing, I like to play tank, and my other tank picks like Roadhog, or they pick like Reinhardt, but I as a main tank myself, you know, like what should I do in situations like this where I can't play my main hero and like my other tank doesn't get voice? Like what should I do? Should I try to accommodate to whatever he's playing, or should I, you know, try just to play my own game, you know, just to try and win on my own terms and stuff like that? Yeah.
Look, I have this issue a lot when I'm playing ranked, whether you have like, you know, 2 main tank players, or your second tank is playing an unfavorable hero like a hog, and the best thing you can do is just accommodate to them. And you know, if you're both main tank players, and they won't swap to off tank, you know, you're just gonna have to accommodate to them. It's unlikely that a double main tank composition will work out. It's not ideal, you know. And if you have a competent off tank hero you can play, it's probably better off, you know. If the other person picks Winston, maybe just try play D.Va or Xayah. But if you don't have the confidence in those heroes, you know, you can always just play another main tank. But obviously it's just ideal to fill in those situations, which it may not be that enjoyable. Like I still get pretty frustrated about it, you know, when I'm playing ranked and I've got to play off tank, and you might not perform as well as you want to be because it's not your main role and stuff like that. But you know, you just got to try your hardest. You know, you're not going to play every game filling for people. Like, just think about it as, you know, I'm just going to play this game, try my hardest. If I win, I win. That's great. If I lose, you know, unfortunate. Next game, I'll hopefully be able to play my main role and do much better than I did last game. So, you know, you just got to go into it with a positive mindset. And sometimes it's hard to maintain that when you get a bit frustrated about stuff. But you know, try to maintain it as much as possible. As an off-tank player learning main tank, what area should I be working on to improve my main tank gameplay? I think it's somewhat dependent on what elo you're at, but I think the best things you can do when you're starting off to learning main tank is just to maintain, like, try to learn all the main tank heroes to a proficient level, and then go from there. You know, it can be hard to learn heroes, like Ball example, he's got a very high skill ceiling, you know, and it's hard to get to that. He's a pretty mechanically intensive hero, but you know, when you're in those first like stages of swapping to main tank or learning main tank, you're going to be you're not going to have the greatest mechanics unless you just, you know, I mean, you might, but most of the time you're going to have pretty weak mechanics compared to the person that's been playing main tank for like the last 5 years on the other team. So I think the best thing you can do is to just work on your communication, and also communicate, like focus on your communication, and also just watch replays of yourself and watch Overwatch League and pros play main tank, because I think a lot of people undervalue the fact that just watching Overwatch League and pros and just like starting to question like why are they doing this play, why are they setting up in this spot, stuff like that. Just like think about stuff like that when you're watching over it and be like, okay, maybe I'll try and incorporate this into my play. I don't mean like, you know, copy paste an Overwatch League perspective into your gameplay, and just, you know, because it might not work in your average ranked game. But just think about things and like why are they diving this hero and not that hero in this specific matchup. And if you watch a decent amount of Overwatch League and stuff like that, you'll like start to become pretty analytical about it all, and just realize and also learn about what you can and cannot get away with without even actually opening the game of Overwatch, just because you're going to be like, okay, well, this Winston hard diving Zen Brig with no nano is probably just not going to work most of the time, so maybe I shouldn't try to do that, you know, maybe I should wait for my Ana to get nano and then maybe dive a safer hero, or get my team's resources to help dive that, and maybe it'll be doable. But yeah, I just think watch a lot of high tier gameplay on your role, and ask a lot of questions. You know, if you, so many pros stream, you just go into their Twitch chat and just ask them questions, because 99% of the time they're gonna answer. You know, it doesn't hurt to ask a question in a stream chat, especially if you want to be learning about a hero that somebody is getting paid a lot of money to be a professional for. You know, they're not going to be like, oh, why do you want to know? They're going to be really like open about it and helpful. At least that's what I found in my experience when, you know, asking players above me, like Overwatch League players, about stuff. So yeah, so it definitely doesn't hurt to ask things. And yeah, just a little bit of self VOD review, you know, watch over your gameplay and just try to gain like a basic level of like all main tank heroes, so you can just have a flexible hero pool, you know, because you don't want to become just really good at one but still like weak at the others, because if you're getting hard counted on that one hero, you're going to struggle when you have to swap off. So just try to work on those things.
Single tank, and yeah, they're gonna rework all the off tanks to be like solo tanks eventually. So will you like continue to like work on the current off tank roster that you're already used to, or will you try to like transition over to main tank?
For that, honestly, you just have to look at how the dev team really balance the off tank and the main tank, especially since like there will only be one tank in the Overwatch 2, if I can remember. So of course it needs like some balancing to do for the main tank and off tank roles. From what I recall, I think Zarya has 2 bubbles, and Ryan can stop his charge, if I can remember. I'm not sure, but when Overwatch 2 comes, I think it's better to relearn, learn the role again, because there'll be balancing patches since it's a 5v5, and it'll be just best to just learn the role again, because it'll be much different. 5v5 will be much different than 6v6. Hope that answers your question. So Bloodclaw asked, if I am playing Roadhog as the off tank, what kind of calling outs should I be making with the rest of my team, as I don't have the other utilities as the rest of the off tank as you mentioned? Alright, so kind of depends, which main tank, which other tank that you know your teammate is playing. Alright, let's say if you're playing Orisa, you can ask for an Orisa pool to help you land your hook, or like to maybe you guarantee your hook. And let's say if he's running maybe a Wrecking Ball as a main tank. Usually Wrecking Ball is much of like a disruptor kind of thing, you know, rolling around, just being annoying, like really annoying in the backline. And at this time you can maybe call out and say, hey ball, can you engage? I'm gonna walk up and try and land for a hook so that you can get a pick. Or let's say if you're playing Sigma or Hog, a popular double off tank comp, you can tell your Sig comp, you can help comp to your Sig saying, hey Sig, can you put up your shield? I want to walk up and I want to try and land a hook. You know, so it's not really about like what callouts you should be making. It's more like in communication wise, if you need something from your team, if you need like your team to commit ultimates so that you can push up as Hog, or you like if you need your other tank to give you shield, or maybe like a nano boost or something, just call it out in the voice comms. You know, it's always great that there's communication in a game like Overwatch, where like teamwork is so important. So for Hog, it's just not really about helping out your team, but it's more about getting picks so that your team can take advantage of the pick and push on to win the team fight. So don't be afraid to ask for any resources you can get in order to guarantee that hook to get a pick. Hope that answers your question, Bloodclaw.
Hi, yes. If let's say I'm in ranked, and I think this is something that quite a number of people actually face too, is that like, let's say if I'm in ranked and my other tank counterpart is playing the same role as me, how would you take the situation if let's say you still want to play off tank and the other player is also playing off tank? So what will you do to tackle this situation?
Alright. So in a case where you're in a ranked game and your other tank counterpart also happens to play off tank and he can play main tank, the best situation here is probably for you to feel and just flex on to the main tank and try your best. Let's say if you really can't play main tank well, there are like popular off tank comps that they ran in the past, like Hog Sig, Hog Ball, or Sigma Ball, or Hog Zarya. So usually in a ranked game you don't always win, but you just have to stay positive. Of course it gets frustrating at times, but just try your best and stay positive and say, hey, I did my best in this game. It's unfortunate that we lost, and hopefully I get to play like my comfortable role in the next game, and just move on to the next game. So like there's no use being all toxic in game saying, hey, why are you taking my role, when when like in rank there isn't a fixed role. So just try your best in every game, and play to your best so that you can win. If you lose, just unfortunate, go next. So hopefully that answers your question. In what situation do you pick Winston Ball over Diva Ball against Brick Anna? I would say okay, this is a kind of tough question. Okay, Winston Ball. So fundamentally, how these two tanks works is that they wanna dive to the backline, and with Winston Ball you don't really have a utility to help your backline. So in this kind of situation, usually if you talk to your team, you wanna do a 6-man dive instead of like an Ana break. Okay, just stay in your backline and just healing from the backline while you take space for the team. Usually for Winston Ball, you wanna do a 6-man team dive, like a Lucio Moira, Tracer Sombra, Winston Ball, where you can just fully commit to against a Brick Anna and kill them fast enough so that they can't sustain against you, and just turn the fight around. So for Diva Ball, it's more of like a being annoying kind of team comp. Diva Ball is more of like I would say an ultimate oriented kind of team comp, where you have Diva trying to protect your backline, and you have Ball that just rolling around in the backline and trying to just be a nuisance in the backline. So once you get your ultimate, like Ball Mines or a Diva Bomb, you can try and combo it. You can maybe throw your Diva Bomb and you can ask your ball to do the, what's it called, the slam, and maybe get 2 picks or a pick so that your team can push in. Or maybe your ball can just, you know, solo dive in himself and just ball slam and mine and maybe get a pick, or like isolate a target so that your team can get a pick. So I think with Diva Ball, you're generally wanting to build ultimates and combo those ultimates so that you can get picks, because I really don't see a potential in Ball Diva that can pull off a dive and really get a pick, because I think it's a kind of a low damage kind of tank compared to Winston Ball. So for Winston Ball, you generally want a 6-man dive, so that you want to kill. So what we say in this high level gameplay is time when you're playing dive is the time to kill a target. So let's say if you want to kill a brick, the best time to kill a brick is probably like 2 seconds. You need like 1 to 2 seconds to really kill a brick, or else you just pretty much lose, because the brick can just sustain over your team comp. So yeah, I think it's more of like a team decision whether your team wanna do a 6-man dive with Winston Ball, or your team wanna be laid back a bit and you just trying to get picks and use ultimates to win fight with Ball Diva. So hopefully that answers your question.
So I have a question for Cuffa, alright?
Yep.
So currently you are playing for Ground Zero Gaming, right? And the Contender season is going on. So can you give some insight about your team? Like, what is your plan and how are you guys planning to go on for this season?
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I played for Ground Zero in Australian Contenders, and we had our first match week 1 2 days ago on Thursday, against probably the hardest team and it was a rough match. We lost the 0-3, but it was a close match. I think we definitely could have won, could have gone either way. Just a couple little mistakes, but they've been a team for a lot longer. We've only had our full roster for just over a week. We had our main sport, one of our old main sport, poached by a Korea Contenders team, because my team is a mixed roster, which is like mainly Korean. There's me and Benji, the tank line, we're Australians, but everyone else is Korean. We've got a Korean coach, but he's got pretty good English, so we can get some translations and stuff like that. I had a lot of help, and the managers have been helping out a lot. So yeah, we're looking to do pretty well in the season. We're definitely going for that first place, to go into competing Gauntlet again, and maybe if everyone's getting vaccinated around the world, there might be a LAN Gauntlet this year, which will be exciting. So yeah, that's our goal. We want to make it to Gauntlet. Yeah, I can give a little bit of insight about like how to match day, and so like when you're going into match, it's always like a bit nerve-wracking. Like I've been competing for 2 years and I still get really nervous and a bit jittery in the warm-up and the match, and you don't always perform as well as you expect to when you're under that pressure. No one can perform at the peak when they're under so much pressure, especially like Overwatch League Grand Finals. Like the amount of pressure those players would have would definitely be stunting their performance. I think a lot of surrounding that is if you have that experience, that's why the older players are much more preferred to be the captains, like Jonak, for example, the NYXL. They've got a team mainly consistent of rookies, but he's just there to be the leadership figure, and he's with that experience, he I guess brings a lot of confidence into the team. He's been in those high pressure situations for years now, being in the stage finals and stuff like that. So he's probably definitely helping out a lot with that, because newer players, it's hard to get used to it. I've been doing it for 2 years, I'm still not used to it. There's always going to be the thought of the back of the head, what if you just play absolutely terrible and stuff like that. But yeah, you just gotta like trust yourself, and I don't really like to be playing that much like ranked or stuff on the day of the match. I prefer to, you know, just, you don't really want to switch up too much from your normal routine, but you just want to like take it easy, you know, like you might want to warm up a bit and then you go into your warm-up scrim and then your match. But you know, try not to switch up too much stuff, because then you'll just feel uncomfortable because you're pushing your comfort zone. So just like sticking to normal basics, and you know, just drinking a lot of water, just being focused, you know. You just gotta be pretty simple. You don't want to just do too many things, you know, and stress you out for no reason.
I have a question for Akame. So like, I think a lot of people know you for, you know, being a flex player. So mostly they know you for like DP. Okay, stupid question. DPS, tank, and support. Of course, a flex player, right? But like over the years, after playing all the roles, how do you think like off tank evolved over the years? Like, what do you think has changed, or like, you know?
Yeah, okay, so I play Overwatch since beta. So off tank then it was like a kind of like a backline kind of thing, where off tanks are just protecting your backline, that's all. But right now, with like how off tank evolve, there's so many different playstyle that you can use. Like, you can just like be aggressive and jumping with your Winston as a diva, or you can like flank as a Hog or Zarya or Stig, or you can just like, you know, just play team base and just protect your whole entire team with your utility. So I think as time goes, people starts to discover more playstyle as an off tank, and like I think this unlocks a lot more different comps for like as a team, so that they can play like, you know, double shield, and then they can just play all around the team. They can play dive, they can play aggressive, I can play Winston double bubble, and then the Zarya can be at the team while Winston just, you know, takes space. And also I think off tank really just evolved a lot like since beta, because yeah, you know, off tank players just find more ways to like really optimize their play throughout the whole team. Yeah.
Okay, and so another question for like both our coaches here today. Since both of you have pretty much played, you know, for a really long time throughout the years, and I'm pretty sure you guys have went through different kinds of metas, you know, learning different kinds of heroes, you know, to accommodate for your team, and probably also, you know, just in general trying to get better at certain heroes. Which meta do you guys think was the most fun to learn and play like throughout the years? Which comp was the one that stands out the most as, you know, I don't mind playing this for a year kind of thing, like kind of meta?
I think Cuffa can go first.
I think the Winston Diva Sombra Lucio Mora Reaper comp. So like the 6-man rush in October. It was around like September, October of 2020. That was definitely the most enjoyable meta, I think. I won Contenders Australia with that during that meta, and it was just a very fun meta. You know, our team was really good for it. Nami was an insane Sombra. We had Adam on Diva, Tung/Terry on Moira, his insane Moira, Bertlog Lucio, and BRS Reaper. So that was a really, really enjoyable meta. Like, I wasn't a good Winston player at the start of that season, but by the end of that season, I was really confident in my Winston, and that was just one of the most, yeah, I'd say that was the most enjoyable meta I've ever played in. Just because the team play was just really, really good. And it felt very rewarding.
think for off tank, would probably be the Ryan Rush meta. And like 3 months ago, I think it was like Ryan Diva, May, McCree, Lucia Bep. They're just like, as a diva, you can be so versatile in like how you play, how you position in a team fight. When the enemy may has ult or not, and like you can do so many creative stuff with your positioning, with how you fight, with how you use your ultimates. And generally, I like this kind of fast-paced meta where both sides of the team just rushes. So I think that's the most enjoyable one for me.
So like the question out to both of you is, when you guys watch your own reviews, your own gameplay, your own codes and stuff, what are the few things that you would take note in order to change your gameplay, to further improve down to weeks or in the future matches? What are the few things you take note of, so that you're able to improve, as you play on?
When I head into an individual review, I generally have a few things in mind about what I want to look at, and it's usually from like poor performance in a scrim and like what I did wrong in a certain fight, and I want to review over that and what I could have done better for it to go on the other way and be successful. So I look at like what like position I took, and also like how I engaged in the fight, and what enemy heroes I was focusing and stuff like that, and just like thought about it and was like, was this the best play, or should I go on for this other hero? Should I go on for the should I go for the soldier instead of the Ana or stuff like that? And then I just like think about it, and then I come up with like the best solution, and like what would have been the most optimal play to do in that fight, and how it would have increased my chances of winning that fight, and then pretty much just go to the next fight that happened and keep doing that, and just rinse repeat. You just gotta like look over your like, if you play a scrim or something like that and you know that you played poorly in a certain area of it, you just gotta go back into the replay and just watch and like realize and acknowledge that you did something that was not good, or like you messed up somewhere, and think of solutions and ways that you can like improve that so that doesn't happen again next time, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think for me, when I do individual reviews as an off tank, the main things I want to look out for is my cooldown usage and how I position to help my team. So let's say if like my team is like dying, and I still have my cooldowns, like during the review I'll see like where I positioned and how during that time this position caused me to not being able to protect my team, and hence that's why they die. So the solutions I want to look out for is that how I want to position myself better in those type of situation, so that I could give them a bubble or give them matrix, and really just help them to survive whatever the enemy team throws at them, and protect the backline whatsoever. And also like looking at my cooldown usage, I think as an off tank it's like really important to manage your own cooldown, so that when times are needed to help your main tank to survive, or maybe help your backline to survive, you have that cooldown to help them to survive whatever the enemy team do. And generally when I do the review, I look out for all these, and then I would try and implement it into my next scrim or just my next game.
Basically, TLDR, what are some of the difficulties that you faced playing with different people, with language barriers, with ping differences, and how do you guys like manage to overcome it? Or like, is there anything unique from this kind of servers and experiences?
I think we have to. So there's not many teams in Australia to scrim, and we generally scrim overseas teams. But we have tried to reach out to a few more Australian teams to scrim Australian servers just so our Korean players can get a little bit of experience playing on high ping, because you don't want to just scrim exclusively like Korean scrims and then go into match day and they're all playing on a ping that they're not familiar with, and then they just like, you know, don't perform to the expectations that we had in scrims because, you know, they're on that much higher ping. So I think just like integrating a little bit of like high ping challenging scrim, well, not like they're not as strong, like the scrims aren't as challenging as the Korean scrims we get, but you know, just being able to have them on high ping is a good like basis and test for them to improve on and get used to, so that helps with that. And yeah, I think their communication as well is actually pretty good, and our coaches helped out a lot with like translations and stuff like that. So and Papago is helping that website, the translator. So yeah, being on this mixed roster hasn't had many issues lately, or like at all. Like I think it's actually very good. I'd rather it than playing with Australian players, because I think there's not many like the packs in Australia's kind of just like falling off, and you know, there's less and less influx of players coming through from tier 3, so you know, there's not many players to get from, and if you don't make if you don't get on the team that has like the reigning champions of Australia, you may as well just try and import players and compete against them. Well, that's been my mindset, because I mean, I want to play Gauntlet and stuff like that. I don't want to just be on like a team that comes like, you know, like 3rd or 4th or something like that, or like weaker. But like I'm playing to win, so I just made it a team that makes me, or gives me the best chance of winning in the situation I've given. So yeah.
So for me, playing in a mixed roster, it was okay for me because I actually learned like basic Korean, so I can kind of comms to them like, hey, what I want to do in the next fight, or like what ults I want to do. Playing in any rank in high ping, 180 ping, it allows me to, you know, improve like how I position myself against players, and not having to save myself based on reaction. So of course, ping, you know, does make it a bit difficult to really like have effects on your abilities, because it's like a 2-second delay when you give like a bubble. So it's more of like a, playing in any rank is kind of more of like a improvement for you to improve your position and improve your game sense, and trying to like predict what's the enemy's team's plan and how you're gonna position that, and your utility timings. So yeah, and right now I am solely just focusing on my army, so I'm not really competing. But in past experiences, you know, playing in mixed rosters actually is like really fun, I would say. You know, having like some jokes around before a scrim start or a match start with the Korean players. Yeah. Even though it's like even though it's kind of like necessary that we need to import these players because of the player base in APAC region, but honestly, like kind of glad that we have imports to, you know, keep the competition alive. So
Yeah, I think the imports actually, like, as much as it's like not really favorable for many people, I think it increases the competitiveness, especially in Australia this season. Because last season, I mean, like half the teams didn't scrim, or most of the teams didn't scrim up until the end, like around the end. It was only like the top 2 or whatever. But now this season, you know, I think at least 5 of the 6 teams are scrimming somewhat consistently, which is actually good. You know, there's not just people just playing it for the paycheck and just putting in no effort and still making a decent amount of money. So it's good because it like encourages them to try, and if they don't try, it's just like they deserve to not get the money that they were getting before, and they won't get it because they're just you know, losing to the teams that actually practice. But yeah, I think it's definitely been a better outcome because like last season, the season before, well, last season especially was like a bit rough. I mean, a lot of teams not practicing, and it's kind of disappointing. And the community kind of puts it on itself by doing it, by like slowly just giving up and then hacking it up. But yeah, I think this has like reignited the spark in a lot of players, at least, because they don't want to just lose when they don't have to. You know, just putting a little bit of effort, a couple scrims a week goes a long way. So
Since the game is mostly dominated by Koreans, as we all know. So do you guys face any challenges? For example, let's say communicating or like word ethics. Like for example, like they want to scrim more, they want to scrim less, and stuff like that. Is there any challenges when you guys are working with your Korean player counterparts?
I think I've come into a few like cultural differences lately, but none of them have really been like negative or anything. I think it's actually pretty cool because you learn a lot more about a culture that you're not really familiar with, or the average Australian probably isn't that familiar with, just because you don't really interact with Koreans that often, most people. I think the work ethic is much better than most Australians competing in Overwatch. Like I said before, barely any teams that properly scrim anymore. But this insurgence of this influx of Koreans playing is like re-emerged that scrimming spirit, I guess. And they want to practice a lot. They want to improve. They want to win. At any cost. So I think their work ethic is something I admire, especially among my teammates and my coach. So when you have players like that giving that much effort, it just like kind of rubs off on you, and you want to do that as well because you don't want to be the one that lets them down and the reason why you lose. So you kind of strive to be at their level, and that's what's happening with me right now. Like that, I'm pretty motivated just by their own desire to improve and win. So yeah.
I think for me, in the past when I played with Koreans in a team, I think the Koreans work really hard, and they especially want to scream 4 hours at least 4 times a week, just to improve. During the time, of course, I was a bit burnt out, but like Cuffa said, I also really want to improve myself too, so that I won't let them down. And playing with them, I admire their hard work in terms of trying to improve so that they can win the matches. So yeah, usually I would play. I would always almost agree if they wanna screen 4 hours, at least probably 3 to 4 times a week, and get VOD review maybe 2 days, and then get 1 day of rest. And also maybe during the rest, the rest day, sometimes I would duel with my Korean teammate to build up the synergy with them, and I'll try and improve my Korean communication skills, so that I can help better understand what they want to do during a scrim or a match better, or trying to help plan for them when we don't know what to do. Yeah.
So we also have a follow-up question from the previous one. So what worries you when you want to step into a different region to play? What are some of the challenges you faced? And also because recently we all know that the APAC region now consists of OCE and Southeast Asia, due to the recent OD changes. So for the players who are upcoming, for let's say in OCE or also in the C region, what would you suggest them doing in order to step into a region where they have actually never played before? What would you advise them to kickstart? For example, let's say playing OD in a different team or something like that.
it's pretty hard. Not gonna lie. I mean, your best bet is to build connections. Really, like as depressing as it sounds, you're not gonna really have that many options in other regions unless you know people who can get you those like opportunities to trial and stuff like that. You know, if you gotta broadcast your name and you out there as much as possible. You know, streaming. You know, because people will recognize you if you're constantly, you know, like if you're trying to go like pro and stuff like that. Like if you're constantly queuing ranked to like a high SR and stuff like high like top 500, and you're streaming all lot and stuff like that, and you're like constantly like putting your name out there, like people will start to notice you, but it takes time and a lot of commitment, and like it's hard. Like yeah, breaking into another region is often really hard, and like it's been my goal for a bit, but you know, I've got to wait till I finish school, and then I'll try to do so next year. But you know, like it's rough trying to go somewhere when someone else can just play in your spot when they're not on the high ping that you're on as well. Like I think a lot of people are deterred by the high ping.
Yeah, I think like what Cuffa say is all about connections really, because in other region you just, you know, don't have anyone you know that can help you to get into a team. You know, all you can do is probably like, you know, try and join different international Discord to like that's like looking for team, and we can like start from there. But other than that, I think you just have to start based on connections, I would say.
Being a Singaporean who has to serve mandatory national service, you know, how do you juggle with trying to achieve and not being able to play full time on the team? Like we all know that you sometimes still do stream time to time Overwatch. Like how do you balance, you know, between your work life and also Overwatch?
Alright, so yeah, as people know, I am serving national service right now, and I'm in a stay-in vocation, so Monday to Friday I would be inside camp and not at home. So usually I would just, you know, Monday to Friday just focus on my army life and focus on my training, but when I'm back home, you know, I tend to just chill, you know, maybe stream sometime, you know, talk to people, and play some ranked games, and just really chill. Currently not really like looking for a team to commit in because I essentially don't have the time to commit. So I mean, if people ask me to be like a sub flex player for their team, I wouldn't mind, but I'll just let them say that, you know, I can't sub for them on the weekdays. So yeah.
You know, people always say, or people whenever they get a chance to ask, you know, like Overwatch League players or Contenders players when they are streaming, like all of the questions that will pop up is, how do you win games? You know, is like I'm stuck in Elo Hell, you know, or I'm slumping, you know, how am I supposed to win this? It's impossible to win, you know. These players are unreal, but somehow the Overwatch League players still manage to win games, you know. So like, what is advice you can give to players who want to win ranked games? You know, let's say for example on maybe like a one hero, they can give an example on, let's say, Winston, or let's say Zarya or Diva. What's one tip, or what's one thing that you usually look out for in ranked in order to carry this, you know, unwinnable game?
I think just communicating as much as humanly possible, probably it will help you in your ranked game. Getting a duo will help out a lot, especially if you want to force a certain hero, you know. Maybe if you want to play Winston, maybe get like an Ana duo or a Zarya duo, stuff like that. Yeah, I think just communicating as much as you can, hoping that your teammates join voice chat is like probably just like the number one way to somewhat improve your chances of winning a game.
Yeah, I think if like you want to win more ranked games, having a reliable duo is probably the way to go. And probably just comes a lot in voice chat. At least like give information to your team so that they will know what to do, and not be a blind chicken running around. Yeah, I think the main thing is just having a reliable duo that you can trust, that can perform really well.
Like, as a player, it's hard to try to get into Overwatch League. It's sometimes hard to get into Contenders, because of how good certain players are. Overwatch League, you have to be the best of the best. You have to be cream of the crop in order to get into a decent team. So like, for players out there who are still aspiring to, trying to breach into these kind of path to pro play and whatnot, in your own opinion, what is the time to stop? What is the time that you think that before you just like call it, like it's probably not gonna work out, or what do you think is like the right time to just move on from trying to achieve pro?
I think when it starts jeopardizing other things in your life is probably like the best time to just pack it up. I mean, unless it's like, it really depends on how close you are. Like you'll know if you're close and you'll know if you're not close. Like I can't really explain how that feels, but like it generally, like, you just need to know a lot of people and ask, like, if it's like Overwatch League season's over and like they hold trials from like October to December, like that's when you go around asking like every Overwatch League manager and coach for trials and stuff like that. But like you really just have to know, like, and be realistic with yourself and be like, can I really see myself doing this next? Like, will this work out for me and stuff like that? Like, it is a reality check, and it's really hard to face for a lot of people. That's why there's so many people like still holding on for hope. But being from SEA or Australia, your chances are already very, very, very low. Which I think is a reason why people don't take it as serious as it used to be. That's why people probably don't scrim near as much. Like, there's no scrim teams in Contenders, just because they're like, I'm not gonna make it pro, so like, just may as well just play for money. But yeah, I mean, it's just rough, and I can't really explain when you like will realize, but like, when you know, you'll know. I don't really know how to explain it.
So for me, I think it's gonna be like giving a time frame for yourself. Let's say I am giving myself a year, to make it into official team like Overwatch League or Contenders. So in this 1 year, I will put in my best effort. If I didn't make it, I would go back to what I do in my life, like study or work, because in the APAC region, honestly, going pro, it's just a very slim chance of you going pro, and it's always best to have like a backup plan, like going to study or going to having a work to help you sustain your daily life. If in this 1 year time frame that you can't reach what your goals are, so I think it's best for you to give yourself a time frame, so you know when to stop, and when to really like go back to reality and then go study and go work. Yeah,
I think maybe like, even if Overwatch League is pretty unlikely for most people, collegiate is like starting to be like somewhat of a sustainable way to go through and like still compete to a level where you can like, some colleges in America and stuff like that are offering like full scholarships and stuff, like just for you to play Overwatch for their team, and like that's like a pretty sustainable way to keep going because like you're still able to practice and you know you still could be like competing at a high level where you have a chance to go Overwatch League, but you're also not jeopardizing the rest of it like the next few years because you're still like actually studying and getting a college degree at the same time, and it's also just free if you under a good collegiate sponsor. Yeah.
If you as tank players, you know, if you had one chance to remove one hero from any role, what would it be?
Break.
Who would it be?
I mean Briggs probably up there, but I don't know.
I don't know, it's either Break or Bap. Like either one, man.
I think maybe Sombra, Brig or Sombra.
But if you only had one, let's say.
Sombra. I just can't stand how a hero can like just stop you from using your abilities for like 6 seconds. That's like coming from a ball player, like that hurts. That hurts.
Maybe for me it'll be Bap.
Yeah, right. I think Brig is definitely like up there though. Maybe Brig instead of Sombra actually, because like I don't know. There's a lot of bad things that happened since Brig came, so.
Okay, so basically, Break is the worst hero in the game.
Yeah.
No one likes her.
It still is since the release.
Yeah, so if you want to climb her on support, play Break. We've come to the end of our session for today. You know, we had the masterclass for Tank early on in the day, and then we moved on to off Tank afterwards, and then we had a good session of Q&A with our fellow coaches today. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to this masterclass. I'd like to thank the coaches for committing their weekend hours for this class. Sharing your knowledge with people in our community. So thank you guys for that. So after this class, we actually still do have classes in plan for the next few months. We won't be stopping with just the tank role. We do have DPS coming up, and we also do have support classes coming up. Further down the few months. So do stay tuned with our programs. And yeah, that's all for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.